Please welcome the CEO of the Children's Investment Fund Foundation, Kate Hampton.
Where's the podium? Good afternoon. It feels like the middle of the night for me, but I think it's still the afternoon here. I'd like to welcome you to a really exciting panel on waste. Before we get to our wonderful speaker lineup, I'd like to introduce a couple of facts for those of you in the audience that aren't experts on the topic. For every pound of waste that consumers discard, there are 70 pounds of additional waste upstream from mining, manufacturing, packaging, and distribution. And so really it is an iceberg. What we actually see as waste actually hides a huge amount of waste. And this is the same problem in greenhouse gas emission inventories in the sense that while people talk about waste being only 3 to 5% of emissions, actually, when you bring in all the other stuff upstream and all the work in the waste sector around recycling and storage and offsets from energy recovery and those type of things, you actually get to much, much closer to 15%. So I think this is a really understated opportunity, and our panelists are going to take us through some of that today and how they're managing to tackle it. I'd also note, for those of you that are non-CO2 gas geeks, that methane is obviously a key element of the waste story. It has a very high-acting impact on the atmosphere over the short term. So actually reducing methane emissions is one of those fast action tools. And if we know anything about climate change, it's that speed is of the essence. And speaking of speed, we have a very busy mayor to introduce. So I'm going to cut my comments short and welcome the wonderful Mayor of San Francisco, London Breed.
Thank you. Thank you for that warm introduction, Kate. And I'm excited to be here with each and every one of you. Today, we're going to talk trash. I don't know about you, but I love talking trash. Global waste generation is increasing faster than any other environmental pollutant. If we don't do something about this now, we are on the pace to have more plastic in the ocean than fish by 2050. That's only 32 years away from now, and all of that trash will severely harm our global environment. That is why what we are doing to our part here in San Francisco to lead a growing international movement to stop waste in its tracks. In 2003, San Francisco became one of the first cities in the country to establish a goal of sending zero waste to landfill or incineration. Since we set that goal, San Francisco has passed some of the most forward-thinking and comprehensive waste reduction policies in the United States. Over the past 15 years, San Francisco has become the first city to make recycling and composting mandatory for residents and businesses. We have been the first to ban plastic bags in the nation, and under legislation I authored, we passed one of the most toughest styrofoam bans in the country. But it's not about just implementing new policies. What we have been able to do in San Francisco is really create a cultural shift. We have been able to effectively reduce products that harm our environment because people and businesses here really get it. We think about how we can reduce our own impacts every day. We bring our reusable bags to the grocery store, and people here in San Francisco really complained about the plastic bag ban, and now no one talks about it. They just bring their bags to the store. We know how to use the green bins, the blue bins. As a result, more material is recycled in San Francisco than is sent to landfill. And San Franciscans are recycling and composting more and more every single year. San Francisco's goal of zero waste is not just a feel-good policy. It has tremendous benefits for our city and our region. Zero waste reduces organics in our landfill, which emit methane, a greenhouse gas emission more harmful than carbon dioxide. Zero waste helps our environment recover with resources right here in our backyard. Every banana peel or used napkin we put in a green bin in San Francisco becomes compost used by farmers and vineyards throughout Northern California. So if you are having a glass of Chardonnay from Napa Valley or some Cabernet on your visit, those grapes likely came from San Francisco compost. Zero waste also creates jobs. Our waste collection partner, Recology, employs hundreds of Bay Area residents for landfilling, recycling, and composting. Our rapidly growing economy, which adds hundreds of jobs every year, is transforming how we consume and generate waste. As economies change, so must our environmental policies and practices. So today, I'm really excited to introduce the Advancing Towards Zero Waste Declaration. San Francisco proudly worked on this declaration with the C40 and other cities in the Waste to Recover network, and by 2030, cities who sign up for this declaration must do three things: reduce waste generated by 15%, reduce the waste sent to landfills or incineration by 50%, and increase the rate of recycling and composting to 70%. We already have commitments from 25 other cities, states, and regions representing over 140 million people. So we need everybody else who's not signed on to this pledge. Together, we do have the potential to reduce 100 million tons of waste by 2030. Reducing waste is something that every one of our cities can do. And in fact, I'm doing it at home by making sure that I'm taking the things that need to go in the blue bin and the green bins and using less and less of the black bin, which is where the trash goes, but more importantly, making sure that I am trying to generate as little waste as possible. I call upon other mayors and cities who have yet to sign on to join this bold commitment. Because as we've seen here in San Francisco, zero waste is more than just a goal. It's a cultural mindset. It is all of us making a conscious decision every day to produce less and less waste for the sake of our planet. I'm confident that this global commitment will drive that cultural shift for generations to come. And I hope that each and every one of you will not only join us in this pledge, but at home, every single day, you'll make a conscious effort to reduce waste more and more each and every day. Thank you all so much for being here.
Wow, thank you, Mayor Breed, and thanks so much to the 25 cities who've signed this declaration. It's a really exciting outcome for GCAS, and it's great to see local leaders stepping up in this way when we're lacking some significant national leadership in some places that will remain nameless. So I'm going to introduce the wonderful panel that we have, and they're all taking amazing action on waste. So I'd like to invite to the stage Mayor Giuseppe Sala, who's the Mayor of Milan. Welcome. We also have Leslie Griffiths, who's the Cabinet Secretary for Wales. Welcome. Minister Damià Calvet from Catalonia, thank you. And finally, the wonderful Mayor of Pune, Mukhtar Tilak. Thank you so much for joining us. So we're going to hear from each of the mayors, and we have a countdown clock here, so I'm going to have to be quite ruthless in cutting things off. So about 4 minutes each would be wonderful, and it would be really good to hear about your commitment to zero waste and why you signed the declaration. And really, we'll try and keep as much time as we can for discussion and focus on things like citizen engagement and how you made it possible so that we can share your insights with others. So, Mayor Sala, if you'd like to go first.
Yes, thank you, Good afternoon, everybody. And thank you for the opportunity to give you the experience of my city, because, I mean, waste is not a sexy story, but, I mean, in Milan, we have a wonderful story. Our activity is basically based on three main pillars. The first one is to maximize the collection and recycling of materials, both in terms of quantity and quality, through the separate collection of 5 different types of waste: paper, glass, plastic, organic, and not recyclable. This is bringing us to have more or less 60% of separate waste collection and recycling. And the rest, the 40%, goes to incinerator, producing energy. Second pillar is to reinvest the saving and part of the benefit to social and vulnerable groups. Let me give you a very, very simple example. We are working on waste in general terms, but mainly we are working on food waste. And we are making this sort of pact, this sort of deal with restaurant or bars or canteen. If you, at the end of the day, donate your waste, that are not waste in synthesis, but still food, eatable, to association who take care of the poor people, we reduce the waste tax to 20%. And this is working. So the second fundamental point is to tell the people you have to work on waste, not only for the social duty, not only because, I mean, the impact on the global warming, but because you can see in your city the effect of the action. And another very important thing is to invest in communication and to have continuous feedback from the people. Again, to give an example, to make things easier, we have dedicated services to facilitate the correct disposal of unconventional waste. For example, we have a tailored pickup of oversized waste, such as furniture. And in the city of design, you can imagine the people replace furniture any single year. No, I'm joking. But the point is exactly this one, to tell the people, okay, we are asking you to do more, but tell me how and where and when and where I can help you. And this is working. So we are in the middle of the road, but honestly, to get the result and to have the result of 60% of recyclable waste is not so bad.
Great, thank you. And thanks so much for keeping to time as well. Congratulations. Leslie Griffiths, would you like to kick off with your thoughts?
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, Prynhawn Dara. It's a real pleasure to be here as a member of the Welsh Government and to tell you about the very good story that we too have in Wales. Our waste strategy actually has been called towards zero waste now for over a decade. But I should say that back in 2000, we were near the bottom of the EU Recycling League. And we're now first in the UK, we're second in Europe, and we're third in the world. That improvement, I think, has come about as a result of a very clear leadership from a Welsh Labour government, the hard work of our local authorities, our councils right across Wales, and of course the behaviour change of the people of Wales. We couldn't have done it without them. So we now recycle 65% of our municipal waste, and we aim to achieve 70% by 2025. And we've got to this point through having a comprehensive package of government measures, and that includes investing in a recycling infrastructure. And we've probably spent about £1 billion over the last 10 years. Just last week, I signed off another 7 million to our local authorities for further improvements over the next year. We've also set statutory targets for our local authorities, and if they don't achieve those targets, they could be fined. We've put a great deal of effort into education and behaviour change initiatives, and that's both to support businesses and people right across Wales. But we've built that strategy around sustainable development right from the start, and really it is a circular economy strategy in all but name. About 3 years ago, we were one of the first countries in the world to set out in legislation a wellbeing goals, and that sort of links up to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and that piece of legislation is called the Wellbeing of Future Generations. So, of course, we know there's much, much more to do, and a more resource-efficient circular economy could be worth, we believe, about £2 billion to the Welsh economy and would probably support about 30,000 new jobs. So we've established a circular economy task force for Wales, and we've brought together all our partners and stakeholders and working in collaboration with them. And the initial focus has been on plastics. And at the same time, we're producing a plastic routes map, and that will help, we think, create a better market for recycled plastic. And products made in Wales, again, will create more jobs and reduce our reliance on overseas markets. We're working with colleagues right across the UK and in other countries to develop a deposit return scheme for glass, plastic and metal cans. And we're also working together on a potential plastics tax, extended producer regulations and also packaging regulations. As a government, we're working with the public sector in Wales through procurement activity to sort of lead by example and show that you can save money. And I think one of the best examples I could give you is one of our health organisations, our Public Health Wales, recently moved offices in our capital city of Cardiff. And all 2,000 items of furniture that they brought to that new office came from a third sector organisation. So again, it yielded significant social benefits as well as environmental ones. And again, I think we should be looking at these solutions, not just as a one-off, but right across Wales. So Wales has signed C40's Advancing Towards Zero Waste Declaration, and that obviously commits us to additional future measures. So we want to consult on increasing our recycling to 80% and provide additional support to achieve that target. So I think we must also ensure that an even greater proportion of the materials that we collect in Wales are used by our manufacturing companies. So I'm very keen to do a piece of work with them. It's not just good for the environment, but it's also good for the companies. And it just builds up that more resilience in the future competitive facility. So we're a very small nation, 3 million people, but we've got really big ambitions.
Thank you. And keeping to time as well. Thank you. Minister Calvet, after you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here on behalf of the Catalan government. Let me introduce not myself, but my country, Catalonia, which covers 34,000 square kilometers, which means that it's slightly larger than Belgium. And we have a population of 7.5 million people, a million more than the Netherlands, and a GDP per capita in 2016 of $35,000. These are our main figures in terms of comparison with well-known European countries to make you understand what Catalonia is. But if you do follow political actuality, and I'm sure that you do, you may also know Catalonia because we are facing nowadays a difficult political moment with political prisoners and our former president in the exile. This situation needs a political solution based on dialogue, justice, and democracy. Having said that, and coming back to the main issue of this conference, let me explain to you that in terms of waste, last year we generated in the whole country 3.5 million tons of municipal waste. This means approximately 500 kilos per inhabitant per year. And our separate collection ratio nowadays is 40%. In the last 30 years, planning and implementing sustainability policies has allowed Catalonia to adapt to European environment standards to guarantee the prosperity of our citizens and of the future generations. And this is the vision that we want to maintain for Catalonia in 2030, in the 2030 horizon, to consider waste as a resource that contributes to the development of a circular economy. Catalonia has been working along these lines for years, in many cases, with more advanced and ambitious goals than those set by European directives, as they are reflected in what we call the General Program for the Prevention of Management of Waste and Resources of Catalonia. Our main objective is to achieve 60% of separate collection by 2020 through more efficient collection systems such as the doorstep system collection and smart and secure waste containers. And why this new system? Because we have realized that Catalan municipalities that have set up doorstep collection models have an average rate of separate collection of 61%. On the other hand, the municipalities with other collection models have an average rate of 38%, which is not high enough. Since the year 2000, the number of municipalities that have adopted this model, the doorstep model, has increased. To date, 156 municipalities have implemented this doorstep collection system, and there will be 233 municipalities in 2019, with a coverage of approximately 25% of our population. So the goal is 60% by 2020. It's difficult, but possible, with a good collaboration between the government and the municipalities, and implementing these new systems as the doorstep system in which we believe. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So Mayor Talack, thank you. You're next.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is an honor to stand at this platform today to speak about the challenges that our world is facing at a rapid force. We generate tons of waste every day, and the waste has become back to haunt us and will be the world's biggest menace if we do not manage it properly. My city, Pune, is 7th largest city in India with approximately population of 5 million people. The city covering area is about 300 square kilometers, and with so many people, naturally the quantum of waste is also very high. We generate about 2,000 tons of waste per day. So it's a very difficult task to manage the waste. So our corporation has taken so many innovative steps to manage the waste that is produced. The first step which has been taken, which is that the segregation of waste. So about 60% waste is segregated now. And the waste that is produced, if segregated properly, it leads to successful waste management technologies. So we provide different types of dustbins to each household to segregate wet and dry waste. I'm talking of this because this may be not new to you, but in my country, it is very difficult to aware people about this segregation and making them or offering them various types of techniques. Considering the diet of Indians, 45% of waste is wet waste, or you can call it as perishable waste. So the second step we did is that the doorstep collection. I will talk it about later because that was the idea behind it. Last couple of days back, we received award from UN for that, this doorstep collection. Then we collect about 70% of waste from this doorstep collection. And the third step is that in my city, there are 30% people who are living in the slums or at community level. So we have implemented the elimination of community waste containers. so that the what used to be in the past, that all the waste was coming on the roads, and the roads were damaged, or it became used to become dirty. So now the containers will periodically eliminated over a span of next 5 years. The main waste dumping ground initially was an open ground, but since 2005, 40 acres of this area was capped to limit the expense of open waste. So capping of waste has resulted in the elimination of fires on dumping grounds. Also, there are tanks built to get the moisture part of it, so that the moisturous part would not go into the rivers or somewhere else. Now, our state has also banned the use of plastic and thermocol. So, so the effect, that is the reduction of approximately 40% of plastic waste is reduced now. So parallel efforts are also taken now along with this policy, and there are various parallel industries are now coming up in the states which revolve around plastic, like plastic to fuel, plastic to energy, and use of plastic in making roads. So we are experimenting on that.
Thank you, Mayor Talak. I just wanted to ask you a question, because you did mention the Climate and Clean Air Coalition Award that you got, which is clearly well deserved. And given such a dense city with a lot of informal settlements and informal economy, what kind of advice could you give to other cities, a bit like Pune? Because clearly there's a lot to learn from your example. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, actually, it's like a women empowerment program. We have started a cooperative, it's an informal cooperative sector, where 3,000 women are going for this door-to-door collection. They collect the waste, they get perishable waste out of it and give it to the secondary collection of municipal corporation, where the containers, they take the wet waste towards landfilling sites. But the recycled waste which these ladies are getting, they sell it in the market. We have produced a regular market for recyclables, so that the paper or plastic or paper boards or something, tins, that is recycled. And these women, every household gives about you can say $1 for that lady per month. I'm telling about per month. They are getting $1 per family, and each lady, she covers about 30 to 40 households every day. And that has become like it's a circular model, and due to this, because they are also collecting recyclable waste, they are also getting money from the households, so they can manage themselves easily. And that has happened, that the waste is not coming on the roads.
Great, that's fantastic news. So a few others mentioned circular economy in your remarks, and clearly, I mean, as we've seen with air quality, waste is also something that the public really understands and can engage with more arcane concepts like planetary boundaries, circular economy, climate change, which often seems a bit out there and a bit big. But when you talk about plastics or you talk about air quality, people seem to understand. So Mayor Talak mentioned circular economy. How have you been engaging the public in what is actually quite a complex integrated waste management story that you need to tell, which is upstream and downstream, and how do you engage your publics? Any comments?
So, talking about circular economy, the government of Catalonia, we are trying to get into global, total, let's say, circular economy by providing grants and subsidies, which are a fundamental instrument for improving environmental behavior in the area of waste prevention and accelerating the transition to a more circular production and consumption models. We want to continue to increase these subsidies this year, and you have to take into account that Catalonia is a small region compared to others, so the dedication of our budget has to be with small figures. We have dedicated 8.5 million euros, allocated them to projects on the environment and sustainability, 1.8 to business projects to promote the circular economy, 5 million to municipal waste, and more than 2 million to promote organic waste collection. We have also created the Catalan Circular Economy Observatory. This is a very useful tool, which aims to provide a reference note in the field of the green and circular economy by helping to share knowledge and promote innovation. This observatory also improves the coherence and visibility of the work done by different public and private stakeholders. This observatory is an example of this clear and bold commitment to improve the competitiveness of the economy, facing the challenges of scarce resources that we have as a planet. And we need to overcome the traditional linear vision of our economy. Yeah. The government is promoting actions to deploy and integrate a new economic model based on an efficient use of resources, which means, after all, a circular economy.
Great, thank you. And Mayor Tillack mentioned engaging through women's empowerment groups, vulnerable communities, to actually be part of the solution. Is that something that other local leaders are doing? Is that something you're also doing?
Yes, certainly in Wales we've done that. You mentioned that people understand waste far more than circular economy. So one thing that we've done in Wales, we've used 3 words: reduce, reuse, recycle, and then people understand why we want them to do that, you know, to keep reusing the materials. So we've had public awareness campaigns now probably for about 16 years, but we've also had specific campaigns to help our more deprived communities, for instance, in relation to food waste. So we've got Love Food, Hate Waste, which, you know, it says what it does on the tin, and to try and encourage people to understand the costs they're thrown away per week if they're throwing food away. So we've had a couple of campaigns on top of just the usual raising of awareness that we've had.
In our vision, we have to work on big example, big action, and also on very, very little action. To give two different examples. But first of all, I was telling you, this tax system is working very well. But apart from for taxes, we are convincing the large distribution that, again, related to food, they can redistribute at the end of the day food that it is very close to expire, but it is eatable. And this is maybe a big action, a very little but nice action. We are working on the schools. We are working with the children. First of all, we understood that if we modify the diet and we substitute to the snacks with fruit, normally the children tend to finish the meal. But the message is that if you don't eat the fruit or bread, take it and bring home. That is crazy, apparently crazy. And the first days, the children went home with the apple or with bread, and the parents asked, why you bring bread at home? And so they started discussing, and the child explained why the teacher has came to do that. And this is a very little example, but always trying to demonstrate that even starting from very little action, you can do something more.
And the role that young people and children can have on their parents is really significant. Have any of you seen a generational difference, and are you really targeting young people to be motives for change?
Well, certainly when, you know, the first time I ever heard the word recycling, you know, long before I was a politician, My girls are in their late 20s, and it was them coming home from school saying, don't throw that in the bin, you know, we need to start recycling. So you're absolutely right. I think we need to work with our children. And again, like the Mayor said, we work with children in schools right across Wales.
That's a great collaboration. So looking at another sector now, the private sector. Can some of you give some examples of how you've engaged the private sector, big and small, in your activities?
Yeah, in my city,
Yeah.
for cleaning of roads or sweeping on the roads is done by private sector company, but they are working as their corporate social responsibility. We are not at all paying them for the sweeping, and they are sweeping the roads. They are collecting the waste from the containers which are on the roads, and that has helped us that the money we can use in any other project.
Thank you. Others?
We experienced a considerable and steady increase in the quantity of cardboard boxes disposal.
Because of internet shopping, that
Yeah,
phenomenon? Yeah.
exactly. So again, the deal was, okay, we modify the timing of collection. And if necessary, we pass through the houses twice a week. But we ask you to modify the system, try to reduce as maximum as possible the quantity of paper or cardboard. And that is a very, very simple example. Of course, not easy, but again, it is very visible at home.
Great, thank you. Any other?
Well, I would like to give an example of what we think that has been a whole success. In fact, we consider like a big surprise, which has been the cultural change required to prevent businesses from freely distributing single-use plastic bags.
Yeah.
This has occurred due to a combination of factors. The fact that plastic bags now have to be paid.
Yeah.
So this is a collaboration with the private sector, and the increased social awareness about the impact these bags have on the environment and specifically on the oceans. It demonstrates that it's a good combination of factors to make major changes. So with a little legislation and with the collaboration of the private sector, we have avoided to use normally, as we used some years ago, these plastic bags.
Great, thank you. Leslie, were you trying to come in
Yeah,
on
I
this?
think, you know, sometimes people look at government to do everything, don't they? I think this is an example where we can't, you know, government can't do everything. You have to do it in collaboration, and I mentioned local authorities and the public. But I think the private sector, and I'd be very happy to learn from other people, because I don't think we've engaged in a way with the private sector that we need to. They produce the packaging that we need to then deal with. So I think they need to take much more of a role in helping us achieve zero waste. But carry bags, I've got quite a nice story about carry bags, because Wales was the first country in the UK to introduce a charge on single-use plastic carry bags. And we have a petitions committee in our government, and we've only been a government for 20 years. And it only needed 50 people to come along with a petition, and this bloke literally turned up at our parliament with this petition saying he wanted to bring in a charge, and it went through very quickly and became legislation. So it was a way of, you know, again, people engaging with our government.
And they do, yeah, I think people do get the waste story. So stepping a little bit back now, there have been some really significant changes in the global recycling market. China has finally said we're not taking any more of your rubbish due to their own environmental concerns. How is that affecting you, and what kind of help do you need from national governments, and how do you see the international dimensions of this playing out and supporting you or actually hindering you?
I suppose one of the ways we've dealt with that is to make sure that more of the material we've recycled is used by Welsh companies. So, for instance, we now have a company in Wales that hasn't been open very long down in South Wales that uses recycled metal. We had nothing before. And I was very fortunate. I've got agriculture in my portfolio as well. And I went out to New Zealand in April to look at agriculture. But I learned from them, you know, they export everything they recycle, they export. And I think that's wrong. I think we really need to make sure that the materials that we recycle are used by our companies in our own country.
Yeah, because that creates, again, the circular economy. There's no impulse for circular if you can just send it somewhere else. Absolutely. Others on that topic?
Well, again, it's talking about circular economy. We have to promote legislative initiatives, laws that take action on certain problematic fractions to reduce waste generation, prohibiting free distribution of, for instance, again, single-use plastic bags, And in Catalonia, we also believe that the government is a role model. So we have to make some examples. For instance, in this year's World Environment Day, the proposal of, as a proposal of our ministry, we have announced the decision to prohibit the use of single-use bottles and objects on all government premises and at public events. So this is again an effort to reduce waste generation, because we cannot export them anymore, as you've said before. So again, circular economy and trying to reinforce, for instance, the eco-design of all kind of objects and materials in order to increase this capacity of the circular economy.
And a couple of you have mentioned plastic bags and also packaging. And as communities get wealthier, they tend to create a lot more waste. And particularly shifts in consumption patterns onto the internet is also generating more waste. What other trends, either positive or negative, are you seeing in terms of your consumers? What's changing, and how do you see the future looking?
People do need a nudge, I think, sometimes, and I think the campaigns that we've had, I mean, particularly around food waste. So we didn't collect food right in the beginning. We collected glass, plastic, metal, and paper. So I think it was only probably about 8 years ago that we started collecting food waste. And now I think it's 99% of households in Wales are able to recycle their food waste. So I suppose that's an example of where we had to up our game. But obviously you need to take people with you as well. So that's where our campaigns come in.
So people's participation is always needed in this sector. In my city, we give incentives such as tax rebates. We encourage people to for composting and at their homes. So vermicomposting is one of the very effective and popular among my city. And community composting is also done. So when 100 houses are there, so we set up decentralized biomethanization plants of say about 5 tons. And a particular area is cleaned of it, and the wet waste is poured in the biomethanization plants, and then the electricity generated for the street lights. So this is the I think the ecosystem, we should follow the ecosystems to for the problem which we are facing up.
We are working with householders, and again, trying to make a sort of deal. We help them to create appropriate common areas to collect for the collection, because it's simple to understand. It is easier to leave your waste in your house or close to your house, mainly in some complex building. They do it. Our proposal is that we are engaging people from design in Milan, and we are asking them to create some specific green, nice collector, for which, again, it is
more attractive.
More attractive, yeah.
Yeah, great. Well, we're running out of time, so I'm going to ask the panelists to make a brief comment. You're clearly leading the way, and if there are people in the audience who are inspired, what would be the last message that you'd leave them with? If there was one thing they really needed to focus on to become a waste leader, whether it's overcoming political economy challenges or community engagement or working with the most vulnerable, or what would be for you the thing that's really taken the most effort and people should really focus on? I'll start with you, Mayor Talat.
As I said, that eco-friendly lives, we should adopt eco-friendly lifestyles. And I think we should think of, it is not a waste. We can have a gold out of it. If we process it properly, if we process it scientifically, a city can have their all energy or electricity out of that waste. So that we should think of it, we should think of scientific technologies, we should adopt them, and we should cater to this problem.
Thank you very much.
I would say that what has allowed us, Catalonia, to get where we are today is the fact that waste management is like a long-distance race that should be started with good planning, steady progress in terms of coordination and cooperation, in our case as a regional government with municipalities. It involves combining the best available technologies. This is something that we have to focus on, and always bearing in mind that waste processing should take place near the production site to save costs. Of course, it is also important to make citizens more aware of the costs associated with waste management. This is a crucial point. And we will never get tired of raising citizen awareness in this sense, given the people's collaboration is fundamental for this paradigm shift. And this is what I would like to underline. Waste should be considered a resource, an economic driver, and a job creator. This is the three main items of what waste, as we should consider waste in a circular economy and in the future, in order to have a better quality of life for our citizens and for future generations.
Thank you.
Thank you. I mentioned in my opening remarks that in 2000, Wales was near the bottom of the league in Europe, and we're now third in the world. So I think what we have done has been the right thing. So, make sure you put the investment in, because the local authorities wouldn't have been able to have that infrastructure for recycling. Very important you take citizens with you. Obviously, recycling is voluntary, and you need to make sure that they understand why they're doing it. And it's now hard for us to get above that 64%, because you have a group of people who probably will never recycle. It doesn't matter how much you raise awareness with them. So you need to work with that group of people. So I think, we've done the right things, but of course there's more to do. We need to work with those group of people that I just mentioned. But one thing I've picked up being here in San Francisco is that your recycling units outside, the one that isn't for glass or plastic says landfill, and I think that's really, really sort of so important that people understand when they throw that piece of rubbish away, it's not going somewhere, far away that they don't have to think about. It's going into landfill. So when I get back into to Parliament next week, I'm going to tell everybody that I think we should have landfill on our recycling.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Communication. It is fundamental, because this waste issues, like, for instance, energy consumption, is something in which you can tell the people, oh yes, there is a government, there is the municipality, but you can do part of the improvement. So start doing your part, and you will see result. And then feedback. Again, fundamental. For instance, in terms of organization of the waste collection, it is fundamental to listen to the citizens. Of course, for sure, they will always ask something better and more. But we cannot evaluate very simple problems or very simple issues, like what time you make the collection, 6 a.m., 7 a.m., or it is too early, but if you wait, you create a problem with the traffic. So a continuous feedback, and pay attention to the request of the people. This is fundamental. Last point, try to work on the duties and the benefits. Example of the benefits, I told you before, if you save food waste, reduce the tax. Example of your duty, and let me say, exaggerating your risk, we have inspector that stay with the collector, and they examine the rubbish. If the building, if the separation is not done, you pay a fine. Not nice, but it works.
It works.
Absolutely. Thank you. Well, we've certainly had an interesting panel, and a couple of things we've learned about. I mean, there's clearly a range of activities happening here, but the engagement of citizens and communication has come out as a really strong point, and the sorts of nudges that Leslie mentioned, the landfill nudge, you know, helping people really understand what's happening to their waste has been really key. We also heard about thinking in an integrated way across waste, transport and traffic, and energy issues, and thinking about those opportunities. And then finally, we heard a lot about really turning this into a positive, thinking about waste as a resource and a potential job creator, a women's empowerment tool, really as a bridge to a circular economy. So some really positive examples here, and I'd like to thank the panel for joining us, and I hope many of you out there are super inspired and will take these learnings home. Thanks ever so much.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Lizzie. Thank you. Thank you. It's a really great panel. Thank you. I really enjoyed it. Thanks so much. Thanks. After you.